What if the greatest act of freedom today is not to stand up? Alan Watts explains why silencing oneself online may be the shortest path to peace and true presence. We live in an era where to exist means to appear, where silence is interpreted as non-existence and digital absence as social failure. But Alan Watts, the philosopher who translated Eastern wisdom into the modern West, offers us a revolutionary perspective, the psychology of not posting as an act of resistance and self-knowledge. While millions run after likes, validation, and virtual recognition, a small portion discover that the real power is in the opposite direction, in intentional silence, in the real presence, in the conscious detachment from the digital performance that consumes our vital energy. This is not a defense of isolation or denial of technology. It is an invitation to understand how the act of not constantly exposing yourself can be the most direct way to regain your inner strength, your authenticity, and your peace of mind. Prepare to question everything you believed about presence, relevance, and personal worth. 1. The invisible vice. Have you ever stopped to count how many times a day you pick up your cell phone for no apparent reason? How many times do you open Instagram, scroll the feed, close and open it again in less than 5 minutes? This behavior is not accidental. It's the result of an addiction carefully designed by algorithms that know your mind better than you know yourself. Alan Watts warned about the dangers of the constant search for external validation. He said that when we depend on the recognition of others to feel complete, we become slaves to an approval that never arrives definitively. Social networks have amplified this phenomenon exponentially. Posting addiction isn't about technology. It's about a deep psychological need to be seen, recognized, validated. Each like works as a small dose of approval that temporarily calms our existential anxiety. But like any drug, tolerance increases. Today you need more likes, more comments, more engagement to feel the same relief. This vicious cycle creates a devastating emotional dependency. You get to live your life through the lens of what you're going to post. Genuine experiences turn into content opportunities. Intimate moments become public performances. Your real identity dissolves into the digital persona you created to please an invisible audience. The cruelest thing is that this addiction masquerades as social connection. You believe you're relating, but you're really just feeding a system that profits from your insecurity. Each post is a silent cry asking, do I exist? Do I matter? Does anyone see me? The psychology behind this behavior is simple and brutal. Your primitive brain can't distinguish between real and virtual approval. A like activates the same neural circuits as a face-to-face approval. But there's one crucial difference. Virtual approval is empty, without substance, without real human connection. Watts taught that true freedom begins when we stop seeking external approval, when we understand that our need for validation is an illusion created by the ego. The ego that insists that you are not enough as you are, that you need to prove your worth constantly. Recognizing this addiction is the first step towards liberation. It is not about judging or blaming yourself. It's about watching with brutal honesty how you've been using social media as an emotional crutch. How have you outsourced your self-esteem to strangers on the internet? The good news is that this addiction can be broken, but it takes courage to face the emptiness that exists behind the constant need to post. It requires willingness to sit with your discomfort without seeking immediate relief in digital dopamine. It is a painful process, but necessary for those who seek real authenticity. Dois ego faminto. The ego is like an emotional black hole that is never completely satisfied. The more you feed him likes, comments, and digital validation, the bigger he gets and the hungrier he becomes. Alan Watts described the ego as a mental construct that makes us believe that we are separate, special, unique, in a way that needs to be constantly proven. On social media, this hungry ego has found its perfect playground. Each post is an opportunity to prove superiority, relevance, or desirability. You post the perfect trip to show that your life is interesting, the gourmet meal to demonstrate sophistication, training in the gym to exhibit discipline. Each image is a silent statement, look how special I am. But here's the cruel paradox. The more you feed this ego through social media, the more insecure it becomes. Because deep down, a part of you knows it's performing, not being. You know that you are creating an edited, filtered, carefully curated version of who you really are. The hungry ego is never satisfied because it is always comparing your life with the apparent life of others, your likes with other people's likes, your success with the performative success you see on screen. This constant comparison is a psychological poison that eats away at your ability to appreciate what you really have. Watts taught that the ego is a useful illusion, but dangerous when taken too seriously. It helps us navigate the social world, but it becomes destructive when we confuse our real identity with this mental construct. On social networks, this confusion reaches pathological levels. The digital ego is even more fragile than the real ego because it depends entirely on external factors that you do not control. The algorithm may decide that your post will not be seen. People may be too busy to interact. Other content may be more engaging. Your hungry ego interprets this lack of engagement as personal rejection. This fragility creates a cycle of constant anxiety. You post and obsessively check the reactions. Each notification is a temporary relief. Each silence is a small ego death. You become hostage to variables completely out of your control. The most insidious thing is how this hungry ego distorts your perception of reality. You begin to believe that your life is only valuable if it is publicly documented and approved. Private experiences lose meaning. Simple moments are devalued if they don't generate content. Liberation from this hungry ego does not happen through more nourishment, but through the understanding of its illusory nature. When you realize that you don't have to prove anything to anyone, that your worth doesn't depend on external approval, something fundamental changes in your relationship with the world. What's suggested that we observe the ego with curiosity, not judgment. Like a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon, this detached observation is the first step to no longer being controlled by this hungry mental construct that is never satisfied. 3. Fake dopamine. Your brain hasn't evolved to handle the amount of stimuli it receives daily through social media. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation and pleasure, is being hijacked by a system designed to be addictive. Each like, comment, or share triggers a small chemical explosion that your primitive brain interprets as a real reward. Alan Watts warned about the dangers of seeking pleasure from artificial sources that disconnect us from the direct experience of life. The dopamine of social media is just that, a synthetic pleasure that replaces genuine satisfactions. It's like swapping a nutritious meal for industrialized sweets. It may satisfy momentarily, but it leaves you hungrier and less nourished. The problem with fake dopamine is that it builds tolerance quickly. What used to give you pleasure with 10 likes now needs 50. What satisfied you with a few comments now requires hundreds of interactions. Their natural reward system becomes desensitized, making real experiences less pleasurable compared to the artificial peaks of networks. This desensitization has devastating consequences on your ability to find satisfaction in simple activities. Reading a book becomes boring compared to infinite scrolling. A real conversation seems too slow compared to the speed of stories. Quiet moments become unbearable because your brain is addicted to constant stimulation. Fake dopamine also distorts your perception of productivity and achievement. Posting about your goals generates the same chemical feeling of having achieved them. Your brain doesn't distinguish between dopamine from sharing an exercise plan and dopamine from actually exercising. Result: you feel productive without producing anything real. Watts taught about the importance of distinguishing between genuine pleasure and artificial gratification. Genuine pleasure arises from direct experience, from total engagement with the present moment. Artificial gratification is always mediated, always dependent on something external, always temporary, and unsatisfactory in the long run. The fake dopamine cycle works like this. You feel an emotional emptiness. You pick up your cell phone looking for relief. You receive some stimuli that generate temporary dopamine. The effect wears off quickly. The emptiness returns amplified, and you need more stimulation to feel the same relief. It is a vicious cycle that is self-perpetuating. Neuroscience shows that this pattern of intermittent stimulation is as addictive as it gets. It's the same principle used in casinos and slot machines. You never know when you're going to get the next reward, so your brain is on constant alert, always waiting for the next dose of dopamine. Breaking this cycle requires a conscious detox, not only from social networks, but from the constant need for stimulation. It means learning to tolerate boredom, silence, the absence of novelty. It means rediscovering simple pleasures that have been overshadowed by the artificial intensity of digital stimuli. True freedom is not in getting more dopamine, but in needing less. To find genuine satisfaction in direct, unmediated experiences. To regain their natural ability to feel pleasure without relying on external validation or artificial stimulation. 4. Toxic performance. You're not living your life. You're performing an idealized version of it for an audience you don't even know. This toxic performance has transformed your existence into a constant theater where you are simultaneously actor, director, and critic of yourself. Alan Watts would say that you're so busy acting that you've forgotten who you really are behind the mask. The toxic performance starts subtly. You choose the perfect angle for the photo, apply the ideal filter. Write the caption that conveys exactly the image you want to project. It seems harmless, but every conscious choice to shape your public image is a departure from your inner truth. You get to live for the camera, even when it's not on. The most insidious thing is how this performance contaminates genuine experiences. You can no longer watch a sunset without thinking about how to photograph it. You can't have an intimate moment without considering whether it's worth a post. Your mind is constantly editing reality, transforming life into content, experience into material for performance. This performance mentality creates a dangerous dissociation between who you are and who you represent you to be. You develop two identities, the real one, which lives private moments of doubt, insecurity, and imperfection, and the digital one, which is always confident, successful, and happy. This division generates constant psychological tension. Watts taught that authenticity is impossible when we are constantly concerned with our image. True spontaneity comes only when there is no audience to impress, when there is no performance to maintain. But on social media, the audience is permanent and invisible, always present in his mind. The toxic performance also distorts their real relationships. You start to see people as potential props for your posts. Friends become co-actors in their digital storytelling. Relationships are evaluated by their potential to generate interesting content. Genuine intimacy is compromised when there is always a mental camera recording. The worst aspect of this performance is that it becomes addictive. The more you perform, the farther you are from your real essence. The more likes you get for the persona you created, the more afraid you are of showing who you really are. You are trapped in a golden prison of approval based on a carefully constructed lie. This constant performance is exhausting. Maintaining a perfect image requires enormous mental energy. You need to remember which version of yourself you presented, maintain consistency in the narrative, hide aspects that don't fit the persona created. It's like being an actor who never leaves the scene. Liberation from toxic performance starts with the courage to disappoint your audience, to show imperfections, to admit flaws, to be human in public. But for many, this idea is terrifying because they have confused their real identity with the performance persona they have created. Watts suggested that true strength comes from authentic vulnerability, not perfect performance. When you stop trying to impress and start simply existing, something powerful happens. You attract people who connect with your real humanity, not your digital mask. 5. Strategic silence. Silence on social networks is not absence, it is concentrated presence. While millions scream for attention in the digital void, those who choose strategic silence develop a magnetic force that attracts effortlessly. Alan Watts taught that real power does not need to announce itself, it simply is. Digital silence is the practical application of this ancestral wisdom. When you stop compulsively posting, something interesting happens. People start to wonder where you are, what you're doing, why you're no longer sharing every detail of your life. This natural curiosity is far more powerful than any post desperate for attention. Mystery attracts more than excessive exposure. Strategic silence is not social isolation or denial of technology. It's a conscious choice to use your life energy for real experiences rather than digital performances. It is deciding that your life is worth more than the content it can generate. It is understanding that not everything needs to be documented to have value. This practice develops a rare quality in the modern world, the ability to be present without having to prove that you are present. You learn to savor moments without the compulsion to share them. He develops a genuine intimacy with his own experiences, without the constant mediation of the approval of others. Watts spoke about the concept of Wu Wei, action through non-action. Strategic silence is digital Wu Wei. You influence through absence, communicate through non-communicating, attract through non-pursuit. It is a paradox that works because it goes against the desperate logic of the attention economy. Silence also protects your psychic energy. Each post is a small leak of vital energy. You invest time thinking about what to post, emotional energy waiting for reactions, mental attention monitoring engagement. Strategic silence conserves this energy for higher purposes. Real growth, genuine relationships, meaningful creation. There is a crucial difference between strategic silence and silence out of fear. Fear is silent because it is ashamed, insecure, or afraid of judgment. Strategic silence arises from trust, from inner completeness, from the understanding that you don't need external validation to fully exist. This kind of silence also develops discernment. When you stop posting automatically, you start questioning, is this really worth sharing? Am I adding value or just making noise? Does this information serve any purpose other than to feed my ego? Most of the time, the answer is no. Strategic silence creates mental space for deeper reflections. Without the constant pressure of generating content, your mind can relax, process experiences in depth, develop genuine insights. You trade the shallowness of constant communication for the depth of silent thought. Paradoxically, when you stop trying to be interesting online, you become more interesting in real life. Your energy is no longer fragmented between multiple digital personas. You become more present in conversations, more attentive to details, more capable of authentic connections because you're not constantly thinking about the next post. 6. Necessary solitude. Loneliness has been demonized by digital culture that equivocates being alone with being isolated. Alan Watts made a fundamental distinction. Loneliness is being alone without feeling lonely. It is finding fulfillment in your own company. This necessary solitude is where true psychological growth takes place, away from external influences and social pressures. On social networks, loneliness has become intolerable because it has been confused with social irrelevance. If you are not constantly connected, sharing, interacting, the feeling is that you do not exist. But this is a dangerous illusion that disconnects us from the real source of inner strength, our ability to be right with ourselves. Necessary solitude isn't about isolating yourself from the world. It's about creating sacred spaces where you can meet without outside interference. It is in these moments of inner silence that you discover who you really are, beyond the social masks, expectations of others, and digital personas that you have created to please others. When you learn to value solitude, something powerful happens. You stop seeking companionship out of desperation and start choosing relationships out of genuine affinity. You no longer need people to fill an inner void because you have discovered that this void is actually a space of creative potential, not a deficiency to be corrected. Digital culture has turned loneliness into FOMO, the fear of missing out. Every moment alone is interpreted as wasted time, wasted opportunity for connection or experience. But Watts taught the opposite. It is in solitude that we find everything that really matters, because we stop looking outside for what already exists inside. This necessary solitude develops a natural magnetic quality. People who are comfortable with themselves radiate a different energy. They don't need constant validation. They're not always seeking approval. They don't depend on others to feel complete. This emotional self-sufficiency is extremely attractive. The practice of conscious solitude also sharpens your intuition. Without the constant noise of other people's opinions, you can hear your inner voice more clearly. Develops discernment to distinguish between their genuine desires and those implanted by social pressure or digital influence. Many people avoid solitude because they're afraid of what they might encounter in silence. Pent-up anxieties, unprocessed sadness, aspects of themselves that they'd rather ignore. But this avoidance only strengthens these unconscious contents. Necessary solitude is where you finally face and integrate these rejected parts of yourself. Solitude is also where authentic creativity is born. Without the constant influence of other creators, trends, or audience expectations, you can access your original creative source. Many of humanity's greatest works were born in moments of deep loneliness, when the creator was completely alone with his inspiration. Watts suggested that solitude is the laboratory of the soul, where you experience different aspects of yourself without external judgment. It's where you can be completely honest about your fears, desires, dreams, and limitations. This radical honesty with yourself is impossible when you're constantly performing for an audience. 7. Magnetic presence. True presence does not scream for attention. It simply exists with such intensity that it naturally attracts. Alan Watts described this quality as the result of being completely present in the moment, without the mental fragmentation that comes from living simultaneously in the real and digital worlds. When you stop dividing your attention between the experience and your documentation, you develop an irresistible magnetic presence. People with magnetic presence have one common characteristic: they are completely where they are. When they talk to you, they're not thinking about the next post, mentally checking notifications, or planning how to turn the moment into content. This undivided attention is so rare in the modern world that it becomes almost hypnotic. Magnetic presence arises when you stop trying to impress and start simply being. There is no effort. There is no performance. There is no attempt to control how others perceive you. There's just a deep acceptance of who you are, combined with a genuine curiosity about the world around you. This quality develops naturally when you free yourself from the need for digital validation. Without the constant worry about your online image, your mental energy is available for real engagement. You can truly listen, respond authentically, be present in a way that touches people on a deep level. Magnetic presence also comes from the ability to be comfortable with silence. While most people fill every pause with words or digital distractions, those with magnetic presence know that silence is where true communication happens. It is in the spaces between words that the deepest connections are formed. Watts taught that authentic presence is like an invisible magnetic field that influences everything around it. People feel calmer, more centered, more themselves in the company of someone truly present. This influence is not manipulative or intentional, it is simply the natural result of being completely integrated. The difference between magnetic presence and performative charisma is fundamental. The performative charisma seeks to impress, manipulate, control the perception of others. The magnetic presence simply is, with no hidden agenda, no need to prove anything. This authenticity is felt instantly and creates natural confidence. When you develop magnetic presence, people begin to seek your company not for what you do or say, but for how they feel when they are with you. You become a safe space where others can download their own masks and be authentic as well. This presence also manifests in the way you move through the world. There's no desperate rush, there's no constant anxiety, there's no need to always be doing something productive or documentable. There is a quality of being at peace with yourself that is immediately noticeable. Magnetic presence is cultivated through the conscious practice of being present. That means resisting the temptation to document every moment, to constantly check your phone, to live in the future or the past. It means consciously choosing to be here right now, completely available for the experience that is taking place. 8. Conscious detachment. Conscious detachment is not indifference or emotional coldness, it is the freedom to engage completely with life without being enslaved by the results. Alan Watts explained that true detachment allows you to love more deeply, create more freely, and live more intensely because you are not constantly concerned with protecting or controlling your experiences. On social media, attachment manifests as the obsessive need to control how you're perceived, how many likes you get, how your posts perform. This attachment to results turns every digital interaction into a source of anxiety. Conscious detachment frees you from this emotional prison. Practicing conscious detachment means posting when you choose to post without specific expectations about reception. You share it because you feel like you have something genuine to offer, not because you need validation. The result, whatever it is, does not affect your self-esteem or sense of personal worth. This detachment also applies to the need to be constantly informed about the lives of others. You can genuinely take an interest in people without having to keep track of every detail of their digital lives. You can care without being consumed by the compulsive curiosity that feeds the infinite scroll. Watts taught that attachment is the root of suffering because it makes us resist the impermanent nature of reality. On social media, this impermanence is accelerated. Trends change quickly. Posts are forgotten within hours. Relevance is ephemeral. Conscious detachment accepts this fluidity without trying to cling to moments of popularity or digital success. Conscious detachment also means not completely identifying with your online persona. You understand that your digital identity is only a limited facet of who you really are. Online criticism or praise doesn't define your value because you know people are reacting to a partial representation, not your totality. This practice develops remarkable emotional stability. You're no longer on the emotional roller coaster of ups and downs based on digital engagement. Your inner peace does not depend on external factors that you do not control. This stability is extremely attractive to others who are still stuck in the cycle of attachment and suffering. Conscious detachment allows you to use technology as a tool, not as an emotional crutch. You can enjoy the positive aspects of social media, genuine connection, knowledge sharing, community building, without getting addicted to the destructive aspects. There is a crucial difference between conscious detachment and emotional suppression. Suppression tries not to feel. Conscious detachment feels completely but does not identify with feelings. You may be disappointed if a post doesn't get the reception you expect, but this disappointment doesn't define who you are or determine your next actions. This detachment also extends to digital relationships. You can genuinely care about people online without needing constant reciprocity. It can offer value without expecting immediate return. This detached generosity creates more authentic connections because there is no hidden agenda or manipulative expectations. 9. Radical authenticity. Radical authenticity is the courage to be completely yourself, even when it means disappointing expectations, losing followers, or facing criticism. Alan Watts said that the greatest human tragedy is to live a lifetime trying to be someone you are not. On social media, this tragedy is amplified because the pressure to perform an idealized version of oneself is constant and relentless. Radical authenticity doesn't mean sharing every thought or emotion publicly. It means that when you choose to express yourself, you do so in a genuine way, without emotional filters designed to please an imaginary audience. It's the difference between vulnerability calculated to generate engagement and genuine honesty that arises from personal integrity. This practice requires tremendous courage because it goes against all the incentives of social networks. Algorithms reward content that generates strong reactions, not necessarily authentic content. Radical authenticity means being willing to be less popular to be more real, less viral to be more true. When you practice radical authenticity, something interesting happens. You attract people who connect with your real essence, not with a carefully constructed mask. These connections are deeper, longer lasting, and more satisfying because they are based on who you really are, not who you intend to be. Radical authenticity also means admitting when you're wrong, when you've changed your mind, when you don't know something. In the digital world where everyone is an expert in everything, this genuine humility is refreshing and powerful. It shows strength, not weakness, because it demonstrates enough security that it doesn't have to look perfect. This practice frees you from the exhaustion of maintaining multiple personas. When you are authentically yourself in all contexts, you don't have to remember which version of yourself presented where. There are no masks to keep, stories to coordinate, images to protect. This simplicity is profoundly liberating. Watts taught that authenticity is not something you achieve, it is something you practice moment by moment. Every choice to be honest instead of impressing, every decision to show vulnerability instead of manufactured force. Every moment of choosing truth over popularity is an act of radical authenticity. Radical authenticity also means accepting that you can't please everyone. Some people will criticize you, others will misunderstand you, still others will simply dislike who you are. This acceptance is liberating because it removes the impossible pressure to be universally loved. This practice develops an unshakable confidence because it is based on something real, who you really are. Performance-based confidence can be destroyed by criticism or failure. Trust based on authenticity is unbreakable because it does not depend on external approval or constant success. Radical authenticity on social media also means using your voice for what really matters to you, not what drives the most engagement. It means talking about topics that touch your heart even if they are not trending topics. It means using your platform, no matter how small, to express your genuine values. 10. Inner revolution. The real revolution doesn't happen in the streets or at the ballot box. It happens in the individual consciousness when you decide to stop living according to the expectations of others and start living according to your inner truth. Alan Watts saw this inner revolution as the only real path to lasting change. Because outer transformation without inner transformation is just superficial rearrangement of the same destructive patterns. The inner revolution in the digital context means rejecting the fundamental premise of the attention economy, that your value as a person is related to your online visibility. It's a silent rebellion against the idea that to exist means to show up, that to matter means to be seen, that to have value means to be validated by strangers on the internet. This revolution starts with a simple but radical decision. You're going to live your life for yourself, not for your audience. You'll make decisions based on your genuine values, not what will generate the most likes. You're going to invest energy in real growth, not follower growth. It will seek satisfaction in direct experiences, not in documentation of those experiences. The inner revolution also means deeply questioning why you feel the need to share certain things. Is it to add genuine value to the world? Is it to connect authentically with others? Or is it to feed your ego, seek validation, or fill an emotional void? This brutal honesty with oneself is the fuel of real transformation. Watts taught that inner revolution is not about rejecting the world, it is about relating to it more consciously and intentionally. You can use social networks but not be used by them. You can participate in digital culture without being enslaved by it. You can be connected without being addicted. This personal revolution has effects that go far beyond your relationship with technology. When you stop seeking external validation, you develop an emotional stability that affects every aspect of your life. Relationships become more authentic, work becomes more meaningful, decisions become more aligned with your real values. Inner revolution also means accepting that you may be wrong about many things you believed about yourself. Maybe you're not as extroverted as you thought, you were just performing extroversion to please others. Maybe you don't like traveling as much as your posts suggest. You're just following a cultural script about what constitutes an interesting life. This revolution requires courage because it means letting go of identities that you have carefully constructed, even if they are not true. It means disappointing people who have become accustomed to a performative version of you. It means choosing authenticity over approval, truth over popularity, integrity over influence. The result of this inner revolution is a freedom that few experience in the modern world. The freedom to be completely yourself, without excuses, without masks, without performance. This freedom is contagious. When you live authentically, you give permission for others to do the same. Watts said that when you really understand who you are, you stop trying to be someone else. This understanding does not come from intellectual analysis, but from direct experience of its own essential nature. The inner revolution is the process of removing everything that is not truly you, until only your authentic, radiant, and free essence remains.